Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thanks very much for joining me this morning for our lesson number 5 Q&A. And today we are going to be looking at micro watersheds. So that's going to be our main focus. We're going to go through the assignment as we normally do, but the reality is the micro watershed is the trickiest part of this assignment, and traditionally this causes students the most amount of challenge, but we're going to walk through it best we can, and then we will answer any questions. I'll just put our Q&A document here in the chat. And people can use that if they want, or you can just post questions into the chat itself, whatever works for you. Okay, now just making sure my volume. Everybody hear me okay? Okay, thank you. All right. Well, let's share screen here and we'll take a look at lesson 5. And we'll just go through what that's all about. The first section here is pretty straightforward. We just want you to go through and do a water survey. So what's that all about? Well, we're just looking at where your drinking water comes from and where the wastewater goes. And for those that are on acreage, you probably have a well and you probably have a septic system. And if you're in an urban area, you will most likely have municipal water system and sewer. So again, this is pretty straightforward, but what we do want to know is that record 24-hour rain event for your area. If you were able to find that, that's going to be handy when we get to the latter part of the assignment here. So as you can see, its first part is worth 4 points, so not a huge amount of work involved in that. Another key part of this first section is the type of roofing material that is being used on your main dwelling, and that, as we go through this this Q&A, you'll see that that plays a big part in what you can do with that water. Okay, so if you have, just as a spoiler alert, if you have asphalt shingle roofing, which is the predominant roofing material in North America, you're not going to want to collect that water and store it. Now, the reason for that, well, I should back up a little bit. You're not going to want to collect that water and store it for use on annual vegetables. The reason for that is the fire retardants and hydrocarbons that are within that roofing material will end up leaching off of it, and that'll end up suspended in the water, and then you will end up applying it to your vegetables, which, because they are such, because they're annuals, compounds can certainly end up in the tissue itself, and then you'd end up ingesting it. So you don't want to do that. But one of the, in my opinion, one of the best uses for water off an asphalt roof is a rain garden. And if the soils on the site work and the lay of the land works. So that's something to keep in the back of your mind. And yeah, that's it for the water survey. So the big sticky point on the whole assignment potentially is this micro watershed. So the macro watershed is pretty easy, and you literally just go online and let's say I'm just gonna ask for a image. Well, there we go. So there's my macro watershed, or there is a macro watershed of part of Vancouver Island, the southern part of Nanaimo, which isn't too far from where I live. And these can come in various sizes in terms of the macro. We could see a watershed for the whole of the island, and this can just keep breaking down into smaller increments until we get into that micro watershed stage. So again, the first part here, the macro, quite easy to find, well documented. The micro watershed is a little bit trickier. So what's that all about? If we look at the template file here, so you'll notice on this section that we start off with what we call the watershed practice sheet, and that's actually, it's really the micro watershed practice sheet. And why is that? Well, in this situation, we have a project site in yellow, and we're trying to figure out how much land above, that's situated above our project site, could potentially influence it in rain events. So that might be a heavy rain event, might just be normal rain. It's basically, as you can see here, this project site is actually smack dab in the middle of a drainage channel here. So this is not ideal in some ways, and maybe not ideal during the winter months. But there are a number of tutorials here. So if we back out, you'll see that Javin has a couple of tutorials he's put in here. And basically all we need to remember is that water flows at a right angle to contour. So if we have contour information, we can use that to project how water is going to flow on the site. So let's zoom back in a little bit here. And I'm not going to do the whole practice sheet, but I will attempt to do a tiny bit of it here for you, just to give you an idea. And then we're going to look at an actual site. There we go. Right. So I will make my watershed boundary, because that's what we're trying to establish, is the boundary. So all water that falls within the boundary of the micro watershed could potentially influence this project site right here. So what you traditionally want to do is go to the bottom portion of the project site, and we have, this is all well labeled, so we can tell the bottom is on the right hand side here. Okay, so this is where our project site our micro watershed starts. Make that a little bit thicker. So that is the bottom of our micro watershed. And then you can see we've got land above this point, just northern, kind of a northern position from here. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. You have to kind of reverse engineer all of your lines. We're not just going to run a line up this way. We wouldn't be able to determine that accurately. So we go up to the contour and we think, aha, we're running at a right angle. So it's going to come down this way. And then we go up to the next one. And so on and so on. And you're going to end up right up at this peak here. And let's see here. Just keep. So this is the kind of exercise that you'll go through. And then it starts to bend. And this is not horribly accurate. But that is representing one line of it, okay? And you can see these are 20-foot contours. So they're pretty broad, and this is a fairly big space here. Let's erase that. So that is kind of step one in this assignment, is just to practice drawing the micro watershed. And then we want, let's get this a little bit bigger. And then we want to determine the high points. So those are pretty easy to figure out. And then we want to figure out the water flow lines. So, and that's really more of this sort of drainage line. Let me just, and if we were starting here, just based on these contours and how they are flowing, we would do something about like that. Okay, that would be one of the lines. There may be more here. And this looks like a little one here. So whenever the contours flow back uphill, that's a good indication that that is a little gully, or it could be a valley. And when the contours are extending out like this is a ridge. So this is a pretty good example of a valley, and that's a pretty good example of a ridge. And it takes a little bit of time looking at these maps to feel comfortable with that. Here we go. I got my chat open. I see somebody has a question. So Gianna has a question here. Why is the bottom to the east of the map? Okay. Can you elaborate on that, Gianna? I'm not sure what you mean. What is it? The bottom on the east side of the map. So we're looking over here at the bottom.
I mean, like when you had the piece of property, it was like on that yellow circle.
Yeah.
You had the bottom on the east of that circle.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. Let's zoom in a little bit again. Yeah, so when we start the micro watershed map, we have our project site boundary. So let's draw that a little clearer. Let's say it's there. And then we want to figure out where we're heading with our boundary. We go to that lowest point, which is this side. So if we started our boundary here, you can see we have a lower position on the project site on this side, on the east side. So we're about 20 feet lower. And if we started over here, we would not get an accurate representation of that. We would we'd go through this exercise, and then we'd realize we missed space on both of these. So we always go to the bottom elevation, the lowest elevation on the project site boundary, and we start at that point. And that's basically where we are right here. And then we know those are going to go uphill. And so uphill in this case is up this ridge here. And then the same thing is going to be on this side. So I'm not going to go through and do the whole practice sheet here for you, but I will we'll walk through another example. How's that? Nancy has a question here. How do you get the pencil function to work? Well, this is a Zoom annotate tool. Yeah, so you'd have to be the host, I think, on Zoom for that to happen. So hopefully that helps you out, Nancy. I think what we'll do is we'll go to a really simple we can get some contour information here really easy. This is basically the town I live in. And let's see here. We'll go there. So for those of you who don't have any contour data, this is one place you can find some. Now, the caveat here is this is not accurate enough to use for professional use. This is great for the class because we get to practice with it and it's free and it's available and easy to access, but you wouldn't want to be using this on a project. So just keep that in mind. So what we do here, we are just going to get our settings into feet, and I want to have level consistent intervals here, 1 foot intervals. And once you have your settings here, all you do is you click in one corner and you click in another, and then you have basically we have this box that is going to be what we're asking our data to fall within. So everywhere within that, we're going to have contour information. So we just hit get data, and there we go. So that's maybe a little too much. So maybe I'll do 2 foot. Now let's get to redraw. That makes it a little clearer. Now, if we took this and we zoom in, I've got to just position this so I can. So you'll notice with the legend, dark blue is low, and that makes sense. This is on a beach. And as we go up in elevation, the colors change until we get into red, which is higher, right? So we can see already that this is the high point and this is the low point, right? So let us presume we have a project boundary. Let's say it is, oh, I don't want it to be blue. Let's say our project boundary is right here. Oh, wow. It changed the tool on me here, so misbehaving a little bit. Okay. We'll just for interest's sake say that's our project boundary. So our first step is going to be finding the low point. And the low point is down at this corner. So as you can see, the way these contours are aligned, they're sort of curling back into the project site. So if I started my my micro watershed boundary going all the way up this boundary here, that's correct. Everything's falling away. So there's nothing here. If rain falls on this location, it's heading in that direction. It's not coming back into the property or the project site. So when we hit the top corner here, then we can start looking at where our boundary may be. And we just have to remember this is going right angle to contour. And this is, you know, somewhat accurate. I'm not pretending that it's totally accurate.
Want to come watch?
Now here's where it gets tricky. We're coming up to the top here and we're hitting a roadway. So whether you're on large acreage or urban, these roadways are constraints. So we know, well, at least I know in this neighborhood, if water hits the road, it's into a roadside ditch or into a catch basin and taken away. So the likelihood of water hitting the south side of Lancefield Road and running onto the north side are extremely, it's extremely unlikely. So our micro watershed boundary is going to end right here, right at the roadway. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start the other side, and we can go there. And now we have our contours sort of bending in a different direction, and we are going to just start catching a little bit of this edge here. And then basically we're right at the edge of the road, and we're going to go all the way up and join this. So the interior of this, oh, sorry about that. There we go. So where I'm highlighting in blue, this is our micro watershed boundary, and it also includes the project site. Okay, so when we have that information, we can then measure this area and determine how much water is potentially going to influence our site. So it's a really powerful tool, and it's certainly something that we use with every project we're doing, where we definitely go through this exercise of getting as high quality contour information that we can, and then figuring out our micro watershed.
Jamie, quick question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of us who have a very urban design or urban property, you mentioned the roadways are kind of the end. If you're surrounded by roadways, does your micro watershed basically limit you to that block?
Yes. Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're you know, traditionally we do with subdivision development, they do such a good job of paving and draining that it's unlikely you're going to have water drifting from one side of the road to another. There may be some rule exceptions to that, where you have roadside ditches and culverts that take water under the road to the other side. You know, there's exceptions to that rule for sure. You can have, I think you mean curb, Sergio. Is that what you mean? Curb cuts? Yeah, that's a strategy. Oh, go ahead, Sergio. No, sorry, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Yeah, I think you might mean curb cuts. And that is a great strategy. Uh-oh, I'll lose my micro watershed map here. Just trying to delete all this. There we go. Yeah, so you're quite right, Sergio. If we go to Brad Lancaster's website here, Harvesting Rainwater, and these are excellent books. I've got both of these, and we actually did developed a course based on these books a few years back, and we want to modify that. But he gets into just what Sergio was talking about, which is basically, it's a little different in Tucson, Arizona. So because of the reduced waterfall or reduced annual rainfall, just trying to, there we go. Here's an example. So they will do what Sergio mentioned here, curb cuts, where they literally cut curbs and divert water off the road into the landscape. Now, that's also done in this example. I have seen, and this is not so much curb cuts, these are just traditional, very low curbs that allow that water off of the road to go into these bioswales or rain gardens or whichever you want to call them, and very effective. But they're quite rare, at least where I live. There's a few neighborhoods that have this, but not too many. And I don't think, unfortunately, we don't see enough of this. It should just be standard practice, in my opinion, to remediate all that water coming off of any roadway. But yeah, that's a really good point, Sergio. It's just unfortunately a little bit on the rare. It doesn't happen that often. So for the most part, if you have your project site here and you've noticed that there are curb cuts, we are collecting off of at least half of the road, then that would be part of your calculation. Absolutely. But I think for most of you, that would not be the case. So that is one way we can look at this. We could do another example if you want. Does I guess this is a question for all of you. Does anybody have any questions about this process? Do you want me to run through another example, or what's the consensus? Does anybody want to shove that into the chat, or I'm happy to. Sure. Okay. Jana, sure, as in another example? I guess so. Okay.
Might as well.
Sure, we'll do that. And you know what? Why don't we do one of your project site examples? So if somebody wants to put their address of their project site into the chat, why don't we do that? That'd be a little more meaningful. There we go. The winner is. All right. Now, the challenge that I have with this system, this is great, provided this is your project site. But when I'm trying to find someone's project site, it can be tricky. Can you maybe unmute, Gianna, and just give me a little bit of a heads up whereabouts you are on
Corner lot.
right here?
Yep, it's that corner lot between Walker and 50th Street. You could see kind of like a crosswalk.
Right here?
Move over to the right. To the right.
Over
Yep.
here?
Yep.
Oh, I see. Okay, cool. So what we'll do is get quite a bit of the block here. Okay, so I have the same settings. I'm going to change this to 1. So I'm going to do 1 foot contours, and we'll click. I might have to reload the software. Yes, I do. Okay, so I'm going to take that. Doesn't like doing multiple searches here. There we go. Okay, so we'll go for 1 foot and we'll click here and we'll click way up there just to see what happens. And then you have to push the get data button here. So that is interesting. Now you can even cheat a little bit. Maybe we'll do 1/2 foot contours. No, something didn't go right here. Sorry. I did not hit the right button. So if you leave it at number of levels, it'll just arbitrarily, there we go. Okay, so that's a little busy. We'll go for 2 foot. All right. Now, it looks like I can zoom in here. Well, maybe not. There we are. Okay, well, this looks pretty straightforward. And I see some questions coming in. I'll answer in 2 seconds here to Stefan and Nancy. So this is our project site here. So let's draw a boundary around that. And we'll do that in red. And I'm just guessing. Uh-oh. I was a little bit enthusiastic there. Okay. So that is going to be fairly accurate. Okay. So we will switch over. And again, we're going to start at the bottom. So if we were looking at our project site boundary and these contours, we notice the lower portion of the project site is towards Rucker Avenue here. So we pretty much know our project site's going to go that way. And then we're going to come up this road here. And then looks like my contour should have come down a bit lower, but I think we can wing it here. So interesting question would be the laneway. Is the laneway going to inhibit our micro watershed? And a question for Gianna. Do you know if there's any catch basins in the laneway, Gianna? Do you recall seeing them?
What was that?
Well, we were drawing our boundary here, and now we're crossing the lane behind, which is essentially a road, right? It's a paved road. Do you know if there are any catch basins? So if water hit this lane, what's going to happen with it? Is it going to go into a drainage system, or do you think it would cross over? Probably wouldn't cross over, right?
Yeah, I know there's one right at the corner of my lot where those
Yeah,
walkway, yeah, right
yeah,
there.
right
There's
there.
one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I'm not sure higher.
Well, let's assume that most roads have a crown in them, right? So they're going to be, that's exaggerated. But let's assume that you're going to be collecting water off of half of that road, and that there's no catch basin. So we've kind of done part of that already. So we can go up this side and so it looks like, just based on this information, that this inside bit here is the micro watershed. So any water falling there potentially could influence our site. Now there's a lot of variables. This is not exact, because you could say, well, what about water hitting the roof and going into a storm drain? Yeah, that's right. So that water may not reach, potentially reach the property here. But let me just refine the outer edge of this a little bit. So that's what I would expect the micro watershed boundary to look like in this situation, right? Clear as mud. And it's roadways or paved lanes are all going to be constraints, right? So we want to factor those in. Now there's a couple of questions here I should get to before we do anything else. So Nancy's saying, still not sure how I can access the pencil function. Yeah, well, Nancy, this is basically today I'm just demonstrating on Zoom. And for yourself, what you'd want to do for your assignment is, let me just erase what I've done. So you're going to find yourself a map, and in a perfect world, let's see here, in a perfect world, we would make this a little bit bigger. So we can do that. We can edit after the fact and then just hit get data. So once you have the data you want, we would just take a screenshot of this. So for me, I just on Mac, it's quite easy. I don't know what kind of operating system you have, but we just take a screenshot of that, and we're going to then put that onto the Google Slides and then draw the micro watershed there. Now you could print it out and do it by hand. You could import it into software you're using. Maybe you're using Morpheo Trace or something like that. But this is kind of the starting point. And for this Q&A Zoom meeting, I'm just using the tools on Zoom, if that makes sense. Stefan. There you go. Thank you, Stefan. There you go. I should have read ahead. All right. Good to hear, Nancy. They got all that straightened out. Is this a little more understandable for anybody? I'm happy to do another one if somebody wants to pop their address into the chat for the project site, or we can do that. If not, oh, there we go. Okay, what's the town or city, Nancy? Yeah, I need towns or cities for the software to understand it. Okay. Okay, we'll take, so I have to reload this again, so it doesn't like. Right. Okay, so I gather you're somewhere around here, Nancy. I'm not sure. It's usually in the center. Okay, let's see if I can recognize. I'm not absolutely sure. It's Nancy, do you mind unmuting yourself and just let me know where I'm.
Yes, Judy, let's see where you are right now.
Oh, I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Barely.
Hello? Oops, can you, Can you hear me at all?
Yeah, I can. I think you just need to be closer to the microphone where,
Oh, no, I think my finger was over the microphone. Okay, yes, so, let's see, I'm just getting my bearings here. So if you were to go up some, yes, and then,
so right here?
but you're so close, that's the property next to us, and from where you are right this minute, if you were to go where that whole bunch of trees are, those are
Uh,
trees on our property. So just
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, just north of where you are? Can you hear me now?
Sort of. Can you just get a little closer to your computer? I think that's probably where your mic is.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay, if you go just north
Uh-huh.
of where your clip is right now,
Okay.
there's a whole bunch of trees, and right now, you're on the property right now.
Okay.
Yes.
That's it.
And then to the west, there's a little bit of clear land and then more trees. That whole thing is our property.
Okay.
Yes, yes. It's,
How about,
and it's on our long driveway, yeah.
okay. Now we'll make this level. We'll do 2 foot and
I really appreciate you doing this.
okay. A little easier to see. Hmm. All right. Well, let's try and put a property site boundary here. So that looks like it's fairly,
And actually, our property doesn't go all the way to the road. We just have one slender driveway. But, the property itself is back where all those trees were.
so it doesn't go all the way to the road. So you have an access road here.
We own a very long driveway, but then
Okay.
the bulk of our property is where all those trees were, and then the clearing, and then more trees.
Well, because I'm having a little trouble hearing you, and just for the point of this exercise, I'm going to just assume that's your boundary, okay? And I'll have to sort of decipher what I'm doing based on that. So if this was your property site boundary and we were trying to figure out the micro watershed, again, we'd want to start at that low point. So let's go there. So this is these corners are the low point. And the way the contour lines are arranged, this is lower, this is higher. So we know that our micro watershed boundary just goes right across the very lowest portion of that. And I'm trying to get this to be thicker. There we are. And then we come up the side here, and it's pretty. It looks like it's going to go approximately in that direction over on that side. And then on this side, it won't go straight up the road. It would be following right angle to these contours. So this is not, again, totally accurate, but so if we were looking at your micro watershed basin, that's kind of what I'm filling in here. Be all this area inside not only your project site, but up Well, it'd be down to the south here. And with that information, it's easy for us to calculate what this area is, and then we can make determinations on how much water potentially could enter or influence the project site. Yeah, so hopefully that makes sense. Does that make sense, Nancy? A little clearer? Great, excellent. Okay. So we've done a few examples there. And one of the things I was going to show you, yeah, we've got about 10 minutes left. Is there, I guess I'll put it out to everybody on the call, is there, I should also check the questions. Okay, we're good. Does anybody want me to go over this again, or are we feeling somewhat confident with it, or how would you all like to proceed?
Jamie, I had put a question in the chat about what if the contours shown here don't quite match what you have experienced in real life?
Okay, sorry about that. I missed your question. I would expect that these contours would be a little different than what you're going to actually observe, because unfortunately with Contour Map Creator, it's using Google Earth data. So I think they're like 10-meter contour intervals that they extract the info from. So it's really not going to be, it's something you wouldn't dare use for professionally, right? But for this exercise, that's okay, right? Because we're just trying to get more familiar with calculating the micro watershed. And if you have do you have contour data for your area that's not generated from the Contour Map Creator?
Yeah, I have like 2 contour lines on my property. It's pretty minimal,
Do you
but it
have,
definitely has a low point, and the low point isn't quite matching up with what I'm seeing on the contour lines.
well, let's just
It's the Bainbridge Island.
yeah, we'll take your address. We have to reload this. It doesn't now, I think you're right at the corner, are you, or?
I'm just completely buried in the trees. If you were to go just north on that corner, same side of the road, I'm in that patch of trees is the house. And you'll see a little clearing, that's my driveway. North, the forest glade lane does not cut into my property. That's a error on the maps.
Okay.
But see where it dips in, there's about an acre there from the road.
Okay, so if so
There you can kind of see it right there. I think can see a roof there by Northeast Forest Glade Road.
yes. So that's your project site residence?
Yep.
Okay. And then the boundary is just above it?
Yep.
And how far over? I tell you what, I'll just get my pencil tool and we can draw it in. So is that approximately?
Yep, and it goes to about where that very light line is that you're just about to hit, the grid line.
Right there, okay.
Yeah.
And
Yep,
then
and would follow that down and then goes right behind that house to the south. It returns back to the house to the south, the one on the corner.
Ah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of approximate.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have this at 2-foot intervals.
I think I must have, because I did this in the contour map creator and it showed me something completely different. So I didn't have the color coding on the right. So this makes more sense.
Yeah, and what will happen is it by default when you load it, it's on
Yeah.
number of levels. So if you
Yeah.
say, oh, I just want 7 levels, it'll arbitrarily assign them. And you
Okay.
won't have consistent contours. So it's really not a great place to be. You want them to be consistent. So here they're 2 foot. We could, if we wanted that to be higher resolution, you know, we could change that to 1 and then ask it to redraw. But for this exercise, 2 is just fine. And of course, this is the high ground.
Yeah.
And this is low. So if we were drawing just get my pencil right. Okay. So we're down at the bottom corner here. And this is basically going to come straight up. And that's just based on these contours. So right angle, you know, water's flowing this way, right?
Yeah.
So anything that hits here is going that way. And then when we get to the top corner, we're ignoring the lane, right?
Yeah. Huh.
Probably, and I could push that up higher, but in all likelihood, whoops. In all likelihood, that's going to come straight down here. And then across the bottom. And that's not exactly the nicest line, but that's the nature of my tool here. And then, so this is the basin, right? So everything that hits inside of that boundary is potentially going to influence your project site.
It's Idaho.
Sorry.
I said it looks like the state of Idaho.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, well,
Thank
hopefully
you. I
that
think I
helps.
must have the tool wasn't working right for me. So
No, and it's again, it's not something you want to use. You know, your client wants you to do some work for them. You don't necessarily want to use this data, but again, for the class here, it's great. But yeah, be cautious of that. So I will erase that. And Sergio has a comment here. I'll get to. All right, so Sergio, what would people use professionally? Yeah, that's a very good question. So when we do, what I'll do, I'll just fire up the drawing here. What we do, Sergio, is typically, it's easier when it's a acreage site. So on acreage sites, we will typically, if it's not too heavily treed, like Tabitha's site here wouldn't be a good example of, let's say, a drone survey because of all the tree cover, unless it's a LiDAR equipped drone that basically can project through, get data through the trees. So we use drone surveys quite a bit. And let me just get, just trying to find. Sorry, I'm just trying to find a drawing that we're working on that I can show you what we've done with that. Right. Yeah, so for us, Sergio, long-winded answer. We like drone surveys, and I'll show you why. Just basically with this drawing here. Site. So this is a base plan of a site we're working on. And all of the contour data here, these are 1 foot intervals. They were taken from a drone survey. And the nice thing about this is we get a high resolution image as well. So if we just go on that, you can see that if we zoom in, you know, we've got lots of resolution here, right? So from a mapping perspective, it's really helpful. If in this case, this was a drone that used photogrammetry. I think I'm pronouncing that right, or maybe wrong. So it needs to see the ground to give accurate contour data, and the project site boundary is off over here. So all of this wooded area is not accurate. We know that, but our design focus is in this right in here. It's this little barn and pasture, and it's really, you know, stormwater management and water collection. That's the big part of this particular project. But for us, starting a drawing, having high resolution images and that data is super helpful. Now, some of these drones, this company that did this for us, they've just upgraded their drone to a LiDAR. So that means they could get us accurate contour data beneath the trees. The other thing that we will do is, this project site was outside of the LiDAR mapping for British Columbia, just by about a block. It was very close, but we often will use that. And provided the satellite has captured that data recently, and there hasn't been any disturbances on the site, then that's a great way to go. So that's what we do with that, Sergio. And we've even had surveys done on urban spaces. I think the last one that we did, yeah, it was just a regular traditional survey. So we had to find the property boundaries for fencing, and we had some elevations taken at that time. I'm not sure I can easily find that. Oh, here we are. Yeah, I haven't looked at this file for a little bit, so how the base plan looks, if it's visible or not. No. But basically, that there is our just trying to make adjustments so we can see this. I don't know. There we go. If I turn these off. That was our original survey. So we have 1 foot, actually they weren't 1 foot contours. I think they are either half meter or 0.25 meter contours. But basically the surveyor mapped out all the significant features, significant trees, and the property boundary and elevations. So those are a couple ways to go about it. And Jennifer, like how I said, this is the basin. Yeah. And that's exactly what it is. It is a basin. Okay, Sean, you take care. And Jennifer, what are the cost of these images? They do vary. If we look at, go back.
I was wondering about those drone photographs. Yeah, those.
Yeah. So if we, where I live, I can get a drone survey like this for about $750. So that's about 7 acres. And the drone goes a little bit beyond. What I traditionally do is I'll go on Google Earth and draw a boundary for the operator, and then he uses that to map out his flight plan. That was one other thing I'm just going to touch on before I go. I know we're at the top of the hour here. And we do use Google Earth to, what do we use it for? Well, to communicate a little bit with our clients. And this is something that you can do if you play around with QGIS. So we got this free LiDAR data from this block here, and it shows us, QGIS is showing us, well, we have some contours. We have contours from a drone survey, and we have the big picture here from the LiDAR, and you can see the drainage on the site here. I have some really good, and we even did an overlay of this image, but it being Google Earth, it takes a little bit of time, and it might not like the fact that I'm doing this with, oh, there we got part of the map. Yeah, this site has a lot of problems. We got called when it was at this state. They had cleared this wetland, and they were trying to solve their water issues here, because there's a rail line that runs right at the back of the property, and it's an elevated rail line. So water flows to here and then hits a pinch point. And but the whole point I was trying to get to here is you can use LiDAR and QGIS data in within Google Earth, which is visually quite powerful. Let me just see, I've got another one here that's of interest. Yeah, sorry, I got it's one of these things trying to keep your directories in order here. Oh, there we go. So this is contour derived from QGIS did for us. And there's our property boundary here. And we were able to, we're doing something slightly different. We're doing slope analysis. This is a little farm, and this tells us the slope in degrees. And we also did this very interesting. way of mapping relief, so we can see how water is running in the area. But this is all part of the geography layer for the farm design. And another one we did up in Quesnel, which is quite a bit north of where we are. There we go. So this is a really odd property in that it had gold mining done to it hundreds of years ago. Right in here, you can see how it's still evident. They would take water. I think they took water from up in here and pumped it, and they just blast the ground. This is, you know, a long time ago, and that's how they were extracting gold from this area.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and then there we have drone data that we got from that. So we have it in 1 meter and half meter. We did key line. There's land capabilities here. Slope analysis, so you can see where things are really steep. And unfortunately for our clients, there was just huge amount of erosion along this top bank, and they bought this property. It was about 70 acres, and it was obviously quite cheap because it had been logged off. But the erosion on this slope going down to the Fraser River, which is a major river going through BC here, you know, this is so extensive. It's, you know, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix it. So I feel bad for him that way. But yeah, so we can use Google Earth to play around with this stuff. So, all right. So I've gone over time here. Thank you very much for all your patience, everybody. Anybody have any questions before we call it a day here? If you go through the week and you run into any trouble trying to find your micro watershed, just drop me a note and I can I'll do all I can to help you out. Let me just gonna pop my little calendar link into the chat here. There you go. So if for some reason you're going through the week and you're having trouble and you just can't work through it, you can click on that link and book a short Zoom meeting with me, and we can take a look at it. And oh, Sean says, I think Sean had a question on Q&A, Doc. Okay, well, thanks for that. I did not see that earlier. Oh, okay. Thank you for that, Jana. Unfortunately, got put down at the bottom of the document here, so let's go take a look at that. Maybe what we'll do is just copy that, put it at the top here. So image. Go. So Sean had a question about creating a pond. And I'm not familiar with that video. Content is content's always changing in the course, so I'm not totally familiar with that. So, all All right. Well, we've done lots of ponds. In an urban setting, you would be having to use a liner, undoubtedly. So we use, there's a couple different types, but you'd want to use an EPDM fish safe liner. And the way we do ours is in some way the same sort of concept that Aquascape suggests, in that our liner is covered with cobble or rock. So you actually don't see the liner, it extends the life of it. And all this cobble within the water creates surface area, which really helps the water quality and that whole natural environment within the pond itself. So I would consider that. Aquatic species. Yeah, you want to be very careful with that. I have made the mistake in my own pond of letting loose quite a nasty invasive, which was very hard to remove. And I wouldn't be putting this any closer than 10 feet from a foundation, just in case you do have any issue. That's my opinion. Southwest corner. Right in here. So you're going to feed it with cistern. Yeah. I mean, we have a wildlife pond on our property right now, and we feed that with overflow from our roof. So my question would be, what you're feeding a cistern, what is your roofing material? Because if you're asphalt shingle and you are overflowing into a pond, then you want to think about that. I wouldn't necessarily be doing that. I would try and get a safer quality or a higher quality water for your fish and your amphibians that'll end up in there. Off the neighbor's shed. Okay. Yeah, if it's coming off the neighbor's shed and it's a good roofing material, sounds like an interesting option, as long as your neighbor's all for it. But yeah, I hope that helps you, Sean. I don't know, I think Sean had to leave the call, so I'll leave a text answer here for him. Thank you very much for that, Gianna. I didn't notice that traditionally our questions kind of keep going up, so the current lesson is at the top, so I did not notice that it got tucked down at the bottom there. And Sergio, what's the general thickness of a pond liner? That's a good question. Oops. Sergio here, water feature. Maybe they'll tell us, I'm not sure. Yeah. There we go. So looks like it comes in two thicknesses. I didn't realize that. So 0.045 and 0.060. And lots of options with width. I've used this product for almost 30 years and had a lot of success with it, provided you protect. We put an underlayment underneath it, and then we make sure that it's covered, the top of it's covered with cobble. So hopefully that answers your question there. Okay, well, we have gone over time here, so I should get going. But thank you very much, everyone, for being part of the call today. And best of luck with your lesson 5, and drop me a note if you run into any challenges at all. But yeah, I look forward to seeing your assignments next week. And then what we're going to do is at the end of next week, we're going to have a little break in the action till the new year. And that'll allow some people to catch up a bit, but we'll have our Christmas break and then we'll be back at her in January. So I hope that everybody has a great holiday season, and thank you very much for all the kind notes, everyone. Yeah, you take care, and we'll look forward to seeing your assignments next week. See you later.